Hi, Mr. Marple. I hope isolation has been going well for you. Today, I'm going to be presenting my map to Savagery assignment, the physical portion and the written portion of the assignment. So let's get started with the island first. I have used 11 pieces of printer paper taped together on a large cardboard sheet in order to draw my map. Let's go over the physical aspects first. So these little toothpicks that you see here with the chapters on them represent what happened and where. These correlate, these toothpicks correlate with the chapter number right here. This is also submitted on to Turnitin. So let's get started on our chapter. Over here, I have built the tents that Ralph and Simon built together. I have drawn the creepers on almost all of the trees, as explained in the book. I have drawn the lot of the flies. I have drawn the path that Jack and his hunters take from the beach to get to Castle Rock, the path that Ralph takes to get up to the mountain and to the dark side of the island. The mountain, the dark side of the island. So the mountain has a fire on it and the dead parachutist and what is remaining of the forest area that was burnt during the first fire. I've also made a fire here that they make after the boat passes and they realize that they should have had a fire down here on the beach. And the reef that they found the conch in. So this is basically my island. I have tried to draw everything. Oh yeah, and this is the scar that runs through the island where the plane crashes. And so yeah, that's pretty much my island. Now let's move on to the key. So the key that I have here is 1/2 a mile for about this much in length for the whole island. My second key is for the writing part of my project. This is the key for emotion level. Orange represents the strongest emotion level or sad or depressed, and the light yellow represents the least emotion level or happy and cheerful. So these are my 3 quotes from the light side and my 3 quotes from the dark side. So let's move on to the chapter quotes that are highlighted in the color that they occur in. So the first quote is, "Who wants me?" Every hand outside the choir except Piggy's was raised immediately. This is happy and cheerful, as it is neon, since this is when they first create a democracy. Our second part is a quote that describes the boys' mental state is, "The circle of boys broke into applause, even after the choir applauded. All the freckles on Jack's face disappeared under a blush of mortification." This is in the light yellow, since it is very happy, since even the choir is clapping for Ralph, since they've always wanted to vote for Ralph, but had loyalty to Jack. So now let's move on to our second chapter. Jack pointed suddenly. His specs, used them as burning glasses. This is very strong emotion, since this is the first time that Jack realizes that they can use technology, which is Piggy's glasses, in order to help them get off the island. So our second quote here is, "Life became a race for the fire, and the boys scattered throughout the upper forest." So this means that the boys scattered throughout the upper forest is very sad and depressing, since they all were really panicked and had to go get the fire for the wood for the fire immediately. Now chapter 3, these both are in pink. Let me just read the quotes really quickly. "Been working for days now, and look, 2 shelters in position, but shaky." And the quote here is, "You wouldn't care to help out with the shelters, I suppose." So these are both in pink because they're kind of midway. Ralph and Simon are proud that they have created the shelters, but they're also sad that Jack and his hunters don't have anything else to do but hunt. Now let's move on to chapter 4. The boys developed their first sense of savagery by painting their faces and with charcoal and blood and white powder. This is more leaning towards more of the stronger emotion, sad or depressed, and savagery, since this is the first time the boys have actually presented themselves as savage or islanders. Now, second quote here is, "The boys had a savage mindset, and he said, 'Come on, I'll creep up and stab.'" So this was in a green, since it's a stronger emotion, and it's pretty depressing, saying that how fast they've changed. Now chapter 5, "Many little kids are really frightened and won't go home," and the quote is, "I'll tell you that what's what. Your little ones started this. With all fear, sometimes we can't put up with being frightened. Only Ralph says you can scream in the night." So this is very strong of an emotion, since Ralph really wants to tell all the kids that the beast actually doesn't really exist, and he's trying to convince them. Now the second portion of chapter 5. Serve you right if something did get to you, you useless lot of crybabies. So Jack says this, and it is in the purplish color that we have very close to the strongest side of emotion. Jack says this because he doesn't really believe that there's a beast, and he thinks that all the little kids are crybabies and don't deserve anything, and he calls them useless. Now let's go into chapter 6. Sam and Eric were both on fire duty for the night on top of the mountain. While they both were talking, Eric saw something moving. They became motionless, gripped each other's arms, and two mouths open. So this is a very strong emotion. So this is when Sam and Eric first discovered that there actually is a beastie, quotation marks, and they go down to Ralph and tell him that there actually is one. And this is when the older kids start believing there's actually a beastie. That's why it's a really strong emotion. Now, our second quote. Ralph pointed fearfully at Eric's face, which had scars where the bushes had torn him. So, the boy shrank away in horror. So this is a pretty strong emotion too, since someone is cut up and they think that he has actually encountered the beastie. Now, let's move on to chapter 7. So, the boys were sitting together when all of a sudden the bushes started moving and a large pig came out running right at the group. I hit him. The spear stuck in. So this is a very strong emotion. That's why it's in green. Since Ralph has his first, this is his first time that Ralph, has hunted, and Ralph actually feels the thrill of hunting. Our second portion of chapter 7. So, all of the boys express fear and emotion. Jack expresses his fear in chapter 7 when he says scared. So this is actually a really big expression for Jack, since Jack isn't usually scared. That's why it's pretty close to the strongest emotion side, since it's in purple. And yeah, this is actually a pretty big moment for Jack. Now chapter 8. So chapter 8, the quote is, he let down from the platform and ran outside the beach, paying no heed to the steady fall of his tears until he dived into the forest. Ralph watched him. So this is a pretty strong emotion. It's actually pretty happy and cheerful, since Ralph says that he doesn't actually need Jack, and everyone's not that stressed, since Jack was actually kind of a pain. So our second quote is, we can do it without Jack married you. So Ralph says this, and it is in green, since it's a really strong emotion, since he knows that he probably won't be able to do it without Jack, since his hunters are loyal to him, but he will still try. So chapter 9. Simon's death was caused by Jack and his hunters, since that there was a beast. Some of the little ones started a ring of their own, and the complementary circles went round and round as the repetition would achieve safety of itself. There was a throb and stamp of a single organism. So this is a pretty strong emotion, since the hunters have first seen the beast here. So our second one is Simon's dead body moved out toward the open sea. This is where the hunters actually kill Simon, mistaking him for this beastie that they think roams the island. This is a really strong emotion. That's why it's in. It's very sad and depressing too, since Simon represents logical thinking, and he really does help the boys, but the boys don't realize that. Chapter 10. So the quote is, they raided Piggy's tent, took his glasses. From his left hand dangled Piggy's broken glasses. So Jack actually raided Ralph's camp and took Piggy's glasses, and this is a pretty strong emotion in green. And since Ralph won't be able to create his own fires now, since they don't have the technology. So why can't they leave us alone is in pink, since this is a mediocre emotion that Piggy shows towards Jack and his hunters. He doesn't really like them, and he wants them to leave him alone. So now let's go to chapter 11. So chapter 11 is actually when Piggy dies. The rock struck Piggy a glancing blow from chin to knee. The conch exploded in 1,000 white fragments and ceased to exist. Piggy fell 40 feet, landed on his back across the square of the red rock in the sea. So this is when Roger actually throws the boulder down from the cliff, and it hits Piggy. And since Piggy can't, Ralph can see, so he moves out of the way, but Piggy can't, so the rock hits him and Piggy dies. So this is a very, very crucial part of the story, where it's the loss of democracy, and since the conch exploded, and it's the loss of Piggy's intellect. So this time the silence was complete. Ralph's lip formed a word, but no sound came. So Ralph is actually really stunned here. That's why it's a really strong emotion. It's in purple, because he doesn't realize right now what he's lost, but he knows that he has lost someone very close to him. So now chapter 12. A naval officer stood on the sand, looking down at Ralph in a wary astonishment. So this is a pretty big part of the story too, where a Navy officer actually rescues them or sees their large fire that Jack has set while he is hunting for Ralph. And now, the last quote that I have here is, the tears began to flow, and sobs shook him. He gave himself up to now for the first time on the island. A great shuddering spasm of grief seemed to wrench his whole body. So this actually happens to Jack when the naval officer saves him, and it is an orange for strongest emotion. And this symbolizes that Jack, although he was savage on the time he was on this island, he realizes what he has lost now. 2 great friends and 2 great island mates that he has killed. So, all in all, yes, that is my project. I have 3 quotes from the light side, 3 quotes from the dark side, a key for all of my chapters. I've read them all out. I have highlighted all of them in order for emotion, and I have made my map. I hope to see you soon, Mr. Marple. Even if that's not possible, I hope to stay in touch. Thank you.